UN Chief Antonio Guterres have joined his voice to that of African leaders, calling on Western leaders to provide financial aid to tackle climate shocks which they caused. Plus, thousands of Sudanese protesters took to the streets of the capital city of Khartoum, demanding for a return to civilian rule following a military coup last year as international organizations maintain seal leave. And those are my big stories of tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for joining us. I am Tekewana at the anchor. We begin this day from Ethiopia, where it's been close to 2 years of civil unrest in the Tigrayan region of Ethiopia, despite multiple attempts to quench the tension. A fresh attack on Tuesday left one person wounded and several others who are still hospitalized. As you tell us, Jigs Nabise.
After several failed attempts to restore peace in Ethiopia's conflict-hit Tigray region, an air strike hit Mekelle, the capital of Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, on Tuesday, wounding at least one person, a local hospital official said. The airstrike happened less than 48 hours after the Tigrayan regional government said they were ready to take part in an AU-led peace process without preconditions. All these in efforts to try to end its war with the central government, which erupted in November 2020. The Ethiopian government has not yet provided an official response to the talks and ceasefire offered by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the party that governs Tigray. Kibrom Gebre Selassie, the chief executive officer of Mekelle's Ada Hospital, said the hospital had received one wounded person from Tuesday's airstrike. He added that the strike had hit the business campus of Mekelle University and Dimiti Yowane TV station, which the regional government runs. The TPLF dominated national politics for nearly 3 decades until Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power in 2018. The TPLF had accused Abiy of centralizing power at the expense of Ethiopia's regions. Abiy denies this and has accused the Tigrayan forces of trying to reclaim power, which they have denied.
Let's make a stop now in Guinea, where the National Front for the Defense of the Constitution, FNDC, and families of victims of July and August demonstrations have filed a complaint against military government leader Mamadi Doumbouya, accusing him of complicity and torture. Photo has a
The family of Abdul Gadiri Diallo, a 16-year-old boy killed in Hamdallah during one of the demonstrations called on by the FNDC, agrees with the choice friend justice. Abdoulaye Dibril Diallo, one of the victims' cousins, said that the complaint should have been filed in Guinea, but as he explained, there have been complaints filed here in court, but so far there has been no follow-up. This is why it was deemed necessary to file it before the French courts. The same optimism is shared by the family of Lamarona Diallo, another young man who was shot dead in Colomna on the outskirts of Conakry during a demonstration organized by the FNDC last month. His brother Amadou Djoubleba also said he has more confidence in the new legal procedure in France. On the French side, there is great hope, but I hope that Guinean justice will be put back on track. The young Lamarona Diallo was killed on his way back from the mosque, says Amadou Djoubleba. That day, there was no demonstration plan. He went to the mosque, he was in front of us. And when we go home, we learned that he had been hit by the bullet. The FNDC said it did not want to comment on the procedure. The complaint nevertheless relies on the universal jurisdiction of the French court, which allows them to hear cases relating to acts of torture even if they are committed abroad by a foreigner or a stranger. It has been said that Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya may be a French passport holder, meaning that France has an obligation to act. The FNDC's lawyer Vincent Brengard said he is waiting for the prosecutor to open a preliminary investigation. There are already certain elements which can be brought to the attention of the French courts. The families of the victims will be at the disposal of justice to be able to give their testimonies. Collaboration from the Guinean justice is also a possibility, even if we obviously see political obstacles in it. The complaint explained that there is no prospect of prosecution in the country as the Guinean courts are not independent. As for an immunity for President Doumbouya, he came to power by a coup d'etat. He is therefore no illegitimate, lawyers have said.
We are going over now to Tanzania, where the 15th edition of the EMISAT User Forum in Africa is underway in Tanzania, with Cameroon represented by Transport Minister Jean-Ernest Masenangale Bibehe. The aim of the forum is to help member states handle meteorological issues. How important is this conference to Cameroon? Follow this report. The European Organization for the Exploitation of Meteorological Satellite is holding its 15th forum in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, with stakeholders involved in the transport sector in Africa, with Cameroon being represented by Transport Minister Jean-Ernest Masenangale Bibehe. The forum opened Tuesday, September 13, will end on Friday, September 16, with the hope that the different participants would have proposed meaningful ideas to sustain the well-established dialogue between EMISAT and the African user community, in particular the National Meteorological Services and their regional centers, but above all, identify actions and innovations that could be taken by EMISAT to meet the requirements of its African partners. The forum equally has as overall objective to facilitate the use of EMISAT satellite data throughout the African continent. Nonetheless, Cameroon being part of the deliberation is a clear indication of her steadfastness in providing better quality services in the air transport business, especially at a point in time when the head of state, President Paul Biya, has instructed the rehabilitation of the abandoned airports in the country, that is Tiko Kuseri and Betwa, which are destined to boost domestic flights in the country. It is therefore imperative to tap constructive ideas from EMISAT, an intergovernmental organization which operates a system of meteorological satellites that observe the atmosphere and ocean and land surfaces 24 hours a day and 365 days a year. The collective data is later supplied to the National Meteorological Services of the member states, including Cameroon, in order to help it better handle eventualities and warning signals whenever they come calling. We go over to Sudan, where thousands of Sudanese protesters stormed major streets of Khartoum yesterday, demanding an end to military rule in their country, as Ewane Epole reports that once more these protesters were being restricted by the military of that country. Her report.
Following a military coup last year, thousands of Sudanese protesters took the streets of the capital, Khartoum, on Tuesday in order to press demands for the return to civilian rule in their territory. Many carried posters criticizing the Senegalese military. Others showed pictures of some of the 116 people that pro-democracy medics say have already been killed in a previous crackdown on the anti-coup protest. Tarek Uthman, a protester, affirmed that a solution could only be reached if their demands are being achieved. For him, there is no time frame for the resolution. As such, they will continue protesting, and this will only come to an end when their demands have been granted. It should be noted that Sudan has been rocked by waves of demonstrations since the armed forces led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan grabbed power in October 2021. Burhan in July pledged in a televised address to step aside and make way for Sudanese functions to agree on a civilian government. Civilian leaders dismissed the move as a ruse. In June, the UN reported that a record of 15 million people in Sudan, around one-third of the population, were facing acute food insecurity and warned the situation was likely to get worse in the near future.
We go over now to Switzerland, where UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on African leaders to press Western leaders to provide the required funds to fight against climate change. This is after a multi-agency presented a worrisome report, as you tell us in this following report. The world continues to face climate shocks. A new multi-agency report coordinated by the World Meteorological Organization showed Tuesday, September 13, that greenhouse gas concentrations were rising to record highs, thus a time for urgent action to mitigate emissions and adapt to the changing climate is now or never.
Heat waves in Europe, colossal floods in Pakistan, prolonged and severe droughts in China, the Horn of Africa, and the United States. There is nothing natural about the new scale of these disasters. They are the price of humanity's fossil fuel addiction. The number of weather, climate and water-related disasters has increased by a factor of 5 over the past 50 years.
After thorough investigation carried out by environmental experts, it is revealed fossil fuel is the principal atmospheric enemy we have got on planet Earth.
This year's United in Science report shows climate impacts heading into uncharted territories of destruction. Yet, each year, we double down on this fossil fuel addiction even as the symptoms get rapidly worse, even as we know the cure. Our leaders pledged in the Paris Agreement to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees and build climate resilience. This year's United in Science report shows that we are way off track.
However, the UN Secretary General called developed countries to deliver on their pledges to finance developing countries' climate adaptation, since they are the principal actors damaging the ecosystem.
Scandal that developed countries have failed to take adaptation seriously and shrugged off their commitments to help the developing world. The Glasgow decision urges developed countries to collectively provide $40 billion a year in new adaptation finance, and this must be delivered in full as a starting point.
The UN chief called echoes a call by representatives of 24 African countries who met last week asking for help to meet their financial commitments to help the continent adapt to climate change. The chairman of the African Union and president of Senegal, Macky Sall, noted with bitterness the absence of leaders of industrialized countries at the Africa Adaptation Summit, which took place on September 5 in Rotterdam. The warning signals are evident, with a rise in the temperature, which will lead to more failed rainy seasons and force thousands to flee their homes, especially the most vulnerable, should African leaders fail to comprehensively press Western leaders to cough out the needed amount of money to resolve climate change issues when they meet in Egypt come November 2022.
And of course, ladies and gentlemen, that last report there talking about the climate change puts a wrap to today's English Primetime Newscast on For You Television. We want to thank you all immensely for your kind attention. On to meet again tomorrow for what must have made news in Africa and the world, from Jamena, Chad, down to Libreville, Gabon.